we brought in 5 alumni who've graduated within the past 5 years, and they're going to share some of their experiences with us. We have a few questions for them that are already prepared, and if you have any questions at the end that we haven't answered, you can go ahead and ask those. So we'll just start out with, like, give us a brief overview of what your experience was at SVSU. What college were you a part of? When did you graduate? And any organizations that you were a part of. If we could have Danny go first.
Okay, yeah, I'm Danny Newton. I graduated a couple years ago with a degree in engineering, mechanical engineering. I came to Saginaw Valley as a kinesiology student, exercise science, and changed it to engineering after halfway through my sophomore year, and ended up sticking with that the rest of the way. I ended up joining Forever Red because my roommate had a crush on a girl that was in Forever Red, and he wanted me to come with him. So that's how that started. And then I stayed in that ever since, and was in a couple engineering groups that I don't think ASME even existed by the time I was done there, and then AFS. And then I played club baseball as well. Did I cover everything? Is that good?
Sorry, my computer connected to my headphones. You're talking. I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure. And then Chelsea, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Chelsea Berg, and I graduated in December 2015 from the College of Ed. My degree is in history, secondary education, and my minor is in English. I commuted, and I was very boring and did not get involved in very much. But I did do some research assistant work with Dr. Kavanaugh in the English department. So I did that, but I wasn't involved in anything other than college.
Thank you. Just to make sure that I'm not missing anybody, is Elizabeth Smith here? No? Okay. Okay, then we'll just start with the next question. So what were your most memorable moments from your time at SVSU?
So for me, it was just kind of having that, having the roommates basically, be your best friends and be with you kind of every step of the way. Just even kind of stuff that would seem sort of silly, just like late weekday nights, up making snacks in the middle of the night, and you're just BSing with your friends. I feel like that's the first thing that you kind of lose. So I don't know, that's what I thought was the best part to me, were just some of the relationships that you're able to build with people that are in the exact same spot in their lives.
Yeah, mine would probably kind of be the opposite. Because I didn't live on campus. I didn't have the roommate experience, which I'm totally cool with. That would have not been good for my personality anyway. But I was really surprised. I expected going into college, that you were going to lose those connections that you had with your teachers in high school and in school. And obviously that's something that was important to me, but I was really excited to quickly find that wasn't the case necessarily. I mean, granted, professors are a little intimidating at first sometimes, but I don't know if any of you know him, but my very first class at SVSU was with Dr. Jolly. That was the first class that I had, first day at SVSU. And I was like, this place is really cool if all the people here are this crazy guy running around screaming about history. Of course, they wasn't the case, but it was a really good first impression. And I ended up having other classes with him and, a good relationship with him. And then I'd mentioned Dr. Kavanaugh, and, she and I still talk, and she did a lot of other really great things, gave me a lot of other great opportunities that I don't want to talk about now because they might go into your other questions. So I'll save those for later.
Thank you. So our next question is, how did you decide to pursue the path that you did?
So for me, I always thought going through high school and, starting out at SVSU, I thought that I wanted to go be a physical therapist. So I went into exercise science, kind of gung ho. And then my first summer in between freshman and sophomore year, I was working actually where I do now. And not doing any engineering work, just working in the warehouse there. And I kind of saw what they were doing in their engineering department and really liked it and thought that I would be good at it. So from there, I took like another semester and had anatomy and phys, and it really wasn't for me. So that's when I decided to make the switch and go into engineering. And from there, I kind of fell in love with the problem solving that goes into it and that sort of aspect of that.
So this one's really easy for me to answer. Once I realized that being a princess was not a feasible life goal, I decided I should be a teacher instead. It's kind of a big jump, but it was the next best thing I could come up with. So I would say I've known that's what I wanted to do probably since I was like under 10. But I originally was planning on going elementary education, and I did not make the decision to make that switch until I was in high school. And one of my high school teachers was like, "You hate math and science. Why would you want to teach elementary school?" And so I made that bigger, more serious decision then. But I say it half jokingly, but it's really true that once I realized that a princess had pretty limited availability, the job market for teachers was probably better.
Awesome. So then what was like a challenge that you experienced at SVSU and how did you overcome it?
There's plenty of them, but probably in particular, there was a point my junior year, I think I was doing a research assistantship and also had a co-op and was taking, I think, 15 credits, and it got to the point where it was a little bit too much. But really was able to kind of lean on some of the professors and, work with them on some stuff, especially the research assistantship, if there was something that, had to get delayed because I had an exam coming up, or thankfully the people I co-opted next year. So thankfully the people there were pretty flexible with being able to do the same thing and being able to, shift priorities to help me out and help me to stay in a good place. So I guess the way I was able to get through it was just not being afraid to ask for help when I needed it, and not trying to be too tough to be a little bit vulnerable with your advisors and let them know that there's some things that you can't do or just don't have the time to do.
To think about this one for a second, but I had clearly put this in like the back of my mind to try to forget about it. I was getting into the College of Ed during the time that they were making some changes, and sometimes you were grandfathered into stuff, sometimes you weren't, and it seemed like everything was going well. And then all of a sudden I was told there were still English classes I needed to take for my minor. And they weren't offered when I needed to take them. So I ended up having to add a semester. So I was not able to student teach with the cohort I had started with, and all of that was very disappointing. But in the end, it was for the best because I was able to do that research intern or the research position with Dr. Kavanaugh because of that. I had another really cool opportunity because of that. And then ultimately, the way I look at it is I probably wouldn't have had the student teaching placement that I did because of that. And I work in the school that I student taught at now. So I think it all happened for a reason, but it was just really frustrating in the moment because I had seemed like I was on track, and all of a sudden it was another semester of classes that I had to take. So.
Okay, so our next question is, how has your career been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, thankfully, so I do engineering for a construction company. So at the beginning, a lot of our projects just completely shut down. I think probably about a month to 6 weeks of a shutdown before they started to open them back up. And so it was really tough, but for those guys, I guess, but I was thankfully a little bit insulated. So we just ended up working from home, and we had enough work out in front of the engineering group that we were able to kind of work from home, and ended up being pretty successful with it. And that's still where we're at. No real plans on returning to an office or anything. But I'm sure Chelsea had a much more difficult time with teaching. I have the easy office job.
Welcome to my at-home classroom. So I have been mostly lucky in that I work for Midland Public Schools, and the goal has always been that we stayed in person as much as possible, even at the high school. But it's still not been easy. So I mean, last year we had our extended spring break that was supposed to be 3 weeks that turned into, the rest of the school year. And every week I would tell my kids, we're probably going to come back, next week and the week after that and the week after that. We did go back in person in the fall, obviously with a lot of restrictions. We do have virtual options. I am teaching virtual classes on top of my normal classes voluntarily, which is mildly insane, but it's okay. And so we were back. We stayed until November. Then my school had so many teachers quarantined that there weren't enough subs. So just my building had to go virtual for a week. Then we were supposed to be coming back for a week before Thanksgiving, but that was when we had the forced shutdown. So we went back for 2 days. And then we just went back on the 19th of January. So we're in person again. It's fantastic, although the honeymoon period for the students is over. They were really excited to be back, but then this last week has just been a long week. I'm like, well, they're not excited to be back anymore. But it's definitely been an experience. I've sat on this couch way more than I have the entire time I ever lived in this house. But this is my at-home classroom. So it's been a challenge, but I'll look back on this someday and be like, it was worth it, hopefully.
Okay. So just a fun question. Where was your favorite place on campus while you were at SVSU?
That's a tough question. I feel like the easy answer is the 4th floor of the library. It's just a nice place. Ooh. I don't know. I always like that. I don't know what it's called. The outdoor sort of like fountainy sculpture area, like by the art building, like where the art building and Curtis meet. I can't remember what it's called, but that was always a cool area. I think that's underrated.
I spent a lot of time in Albert E's, where Panda Express is now, but I never had that gift. But it was Quiznos when I was there, which was much better than Subway. And so I spent a lot of time there, but Dr. Kavanaugh's office is in the complex with the science department. I don't know why, but it is. But they had a coffee pot with like the good creamer, and the secretary would just let me go make my own. So I always went there too.
I think
Okay. Oh.
I think with it being this cold too, there's also a little special place in my heart the first time the antelope fountain gets going.
Yeah. Okay. So what advice do you have for college students who are currently trying to navigate what's already challenging with college in the midst of a pandemic?
Yeah, I'm not really jealous of you guys having to learn virtually. I that sucks. I had one online class and I hated it. It's definitely not easy. But I guess just kind of keep just being able to keep your mind on where you want to be and not kind of how it sucks right now. And hopefully we'll be able to get through it soon enough, and everybody can get back to, a regular campus experience, and hopefully it doesn't, hamper you guys, one, education, and two, fun, being able to do stuff with everybody. But yeah, just kind of hopefully get through it, I guess, just keep working.
I have to agree with all of that, but I think that the one big thing that all of you have that, I mean, I know what my students are going through and how it doesn't always work well for them. You all want to be here and want to be doing what you're doing. So I think that doesn't make it any better, but it makes it a little bit easier. I know the whole online class thing, I had like one and it was like a blended class. It wasn't even full online. And I didn't like that. I was like, I don't want to talk to people on this discussion board. I want to go talk to them in real life. And so it's crazy now to think that that one class that I disliked so much for that one semester is like how you do everything now. But like I said, I think that your desire to be there definitely makes it easier. I am actually going to school right now for my master's, not going to SVSU. Sorry, SVSU, but you did not have the program that I wanted. And it's full online because obviously I live in Michigan and my school is in Nebraska. And so I really miss the personal connection there. And I mean, even though I don't have a choice to be in person, I still really wish, although I would never have time to do it in person, I wish it was in person sometimes. So I sort of feel that pain, but mine is self-selected online. So.
Okay. And this is actually the last question I had prepared because I anticipated this taking a little bit longer with 5 people. So hopefully everybody has questions. But so what was your favorite college or money hack that you used?
Oh boy. Can I skip and think of a good one?
Don't buy books from a bookstore.
Yes.
My advisor terrified me into thinking I would fail all my classes if I didn't like the first semester, and I went and bought them all from the bookstore. And then the next semester I realized I could buy them all on Amazon for like a third of the price.
Yeah, and off of that, I don't know how many of you are in SET or in a program like that, but I always had really good luck with the international versions. They were about maybe a third of the price. But yes, that's a very good one, the books.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for answering our questions. Does anybody have any other questions for them?
Do you want us to unmute? Courtney, just go ahead with your question because you were first.
I guess I'll lower my hand. If you were to go back and redo one thing from your college, well, either your college career and your professional career, what would that be and then why?
So I guess mine, when I graduated, my first job, I went through my co-op. It really wasn't, what I wanted to do with my degree. But it started to get like closer and closer to graduation. I didn't have a job lined up and I didn't have a job lined up. And then I got a job offer from where I was co-oping. I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do. But I took it anyway and ended up leaving after 3 months. If I could have done that over, I would have waited a little bit and tried not to feel the pressure of needing to get like a grown-up job right away or have one, the Monday after your graduation ceremony. In the grand scheme of things, it didn't really make a bit of difference. Like I probably for those 3 months, it was a little more financially secure, but I don't really think that was worth the headache or, worry about than me thinking for the next 3 months that I had pigeonholed myself into a career that I didn't want. And going those 3 months with, going into work every day, not really enjoying myself or having a good time.
Can't really say there's anything I would probably change with my career because, like I said, I am at the school I did my student teaching at. Was not an easy path to get there. There was a year in between graduating and finally getting into the district, into Midland Public Schools that was very bad. A lot of in between, having a job that was not a job that I wanted and that I ended up having to leave, which is not something that anybody really wants to do. But If I think probably to my college experience more, I wish I would have been probably involved in more, done more. Like I went to one football game and it was the one after like the scholarship recipient breakfast that they gave you the tickets for free. And we only went because my dad wanted to go. So I would probably get involved a little bit more. But I also feel that same way probably about my high school experience too. So nothing I can change, but I like to think that maybe now I might be a little more outgoing and interested in getting into things because of that, but not really.
I have a question. I am in the College of Ed and I student teach in a year. Do you have any advice for future student teachers? I guess that's pretty specific to Chelsea, but.
I have to unmute myself first. You'd think I would be used to that by now. It's hard because it's so much. I had probably the best experience that, I mean, I guess I'm a little biased, but probably the best experience that you could have. I had an awesome host teacher, and it clicked. I had a relatively easy schedule. I don't know if you're elementary or secondary, but I taught the same class all day. So I only had one prep and they're like, this is never going to happen in your career, so don't get used to it. And they were right. But that made it very easy. And it just, communication, I think, is a big thing. And being willing to work with your host teacher. I know I was surprised that SVSU, and I don't know if it's changed, they encouraged like several weeks of working with your host teacher, then teaching on your own, but then before you left, bringing your host teacher back in so the students could kind of transition back to them being the teacher. So I kind of went into it with a mindset of 15 weeks on my own. And really it was maybe like 5 because we had done the 2 transition periods. So I know that that wasn't really what I was expecting it to be, but I know out of all of the fieldwork experiences I had, by far my student teaching was the best. So a lot of it's just kind of the luck of the draw, but I haven't really heard of many people that had negative experiences either. So
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
I guess I'll go with my question since mine is a little more specific to Danny. I'm actually a 3rd-year mechanical engineering student right now, so I really loved hearing you both talk. You guys are great speakers, so thank you for coming. But I have like 2 questions. What would you say was your hardest class? And do you have any advice for me going into my senior design project?
For your senior design project, I would say, I don't know if the rules are still the same as when I did it, but I had, we each had kind of had groups of 3 and then we're paired up with an international student. So I don't know if that's the same rules, but the 2 of the people I had gone through most of my classes with, and I knew that they were trustworthy to, you know, get their part done if we were splitting things up, and they would, you know, be accountable. Not even that they were the best engineers, they were really good engineers, but I would say more importantly, being able to trust your group and having people, you're going to spend a lot of time with them. So have people that you are able to be around in non, you know, class engineering settings. And then I thought my hardest class was controls. I'm either that or differential equations. Like that deep into math isn't really my cup of tea.
I'm taking controls right now and it is a struggle so far.
Yeah, it's a lot. But that was by far the hardest that I thought. And then, and you're also for the senior design, just you know, have a little fun with it. It's not so serious. I've never had a job interview where anybody really asked about it. They, you know, might have, oh, what'd you do? But have fun with it. It's not the end of the world if something doesn't work on the first try. It's a process.
Thank you so much.
I also have another question for the both of you, if that's okay. I guess, so in both of your positions, what characteristics do you see that make people the most successful in those roles?
I feel like being able to get along and being personable with your coworkers is kind of the utmost. You can be the best at whatever you're doing, but if nobody, if nobody can get along with you and you don't work well with others, or share responsibilities when you need to share responsibilities, it's probably not going to work out. There's, at least from my experience, there's nothing that I've done that somebody else couldn't do. So just be, kind of humble, I guess, about your position. You're not going to be a manager in a week. Just kind of stay humble and be personable and try and enjoy the surrounding and people you work with. And it's COVID kind of sucks with that because you don't get to actually talk to anybody. But that's what I always thought would the kind of people that were most successful in their jobs were.
That one's probably a little harder for me because I mean, we do have, our departments that function as teams, but essentially we're still kind of little islands of our own when it comes to our classrooms. We might be teaching the same thing, but we do it very differently. But I think obviously the last year and a half has really demonstrated that flexibility is huge. I know that it's not always easy, but that's kind of what we've had to give ourselves and our students right now. And I know some of my colleagues struggle with that, and they're the ones that really struggled to adapt to the online environment. And you hear about it from them, you hear about it from the students you share. And so I think that I realized in the last year and a half that that's probably bigger, but flexibility is always kind of big in what I do because I teach the same thing 3 times a day. I have the same class 3 times a day, and first hour and sixth hour are doing the same thing, but they're totally different groups of people. And I just make up a lot of stuff as I go. And we have co-teachers in some of our classes, and my co-teacher will be like, that's a really great idea. Where'd you get that? I'm like, I made it up in the car on the way here this morning. And so it's just kind of a lot of flexibility that I did not have like when I was student teaching. Like I was like, this is what we're doing this day. This is what we have to do. This is what we're doing tomorrow. And now half the time, like I don't have anything written in the planner for the end of the week because I just sort of see how it goes. So that's definitely a skill that I've had to adapt to, but it's getting easier with time.
Okay, I have a question too. So I guess one of the biggest worries that I have for after graduation is like, how do you making that transition? Like all 3 of my roommates are in this call. Some of my best friends are from Forever Red. Like I'm really nervous because I have found my identity here. So like, I guess like, how did you find your place in like your job after graduation and like, just like make that transition?
So I feel like I sort of had a little bit of an easy transition out. Like I said, those kind of 3 months where I was working like right in Saginaw still, I actually lived with 2 people that were also in Forever Red. Right before I actually moved back home to Detroit. So it was a little bit of a kind of gentle decline. But there's no reason that you can't kind of keep up those relationships. There's a group of us that were actually, I think all of us were in Forever Red, but there's a small group of us that'll like go up to a cabin every year and just hang out for a weekend. So the time between seeing each other gets a little further apart, but in my experience, a lot of the friendships and that you build through Forever Red kind of can last those couple months in between seeing each other or even talking to each other, texting each other. It's like you never left when you hang out with each other.
Most of my connections were with the people in my cohort. And so it sort of, forcibly when I got separated from them, I ended up, not really talking to as many of them, but then I got put into another great group of people. And we're still friends on Facebook and we see what each other's doing. Sometimes we see each other at teacher things. And we might ever again if teacher things happen in person ever again, and stuff like that. But I didn't have, like I said, the roommates to have that connection, but I I graduated in December. So especially for education, that's a really bad time to graduate because you're not going to get a job halfway through the school year. And so I did sub in my host school for the rest of the year. And then that whole year after was just kind of a disaster. And I wished I was back at SVSU because life would have been easier. Over the course of a year, I had like 4 different jobs because I coordinated an after school program. I did subbing. I got a job in a district. And on the second day, I decided that that was not going to happen. But I stuck with it for 2.5 months until I got a long-term sub position. And so it was just a lot that first year. And so it was very stressful. And I sort of just missed, the easiness of going to SVSU. But I was patient, and then I got where I needed to be. So
Also, in my experience, you're gonna get pretty bored pretty fast. It's gonna be nice for like the first few months. You're gonna be like, yeah, I don't have to do all this crap that I had to do, and then it's gonna be like, oh wow, I wish I had something to do.
I guess, sorry for all the questions. I'm just curious. To be completely frank, I feel like Chelsea, you kind of mentioned on it about being flexible. Like, I feel like I'm making stuff up as I go. Is that normal still after college? And I'm sorry for the frank question. I just want to make sure, like, I'm not missing a secret, I guess.
I literally make things up every single day. Driving to and from work, I have about like a 20 to 25 minute drive. That is when I do my best thinking. Like there's sometimes random notes in my phone that I put at a stoplight because I know I'll forget between the time I get to school and when I get the idea. But I really like, at least, I mean, I don't know what you're going into, but for me, I feel like I have a penciled in like scaffolding sketch of what I want to do every day, but then I just make the rest of it up as I go.
Yeah, I try and I have like a little notebook that I try and like schedule out what I'm gonna do the next day at the end of the day before, and I think I have yet to actually follow through on that. Because it's just I have no idea what I'm doing at any point. So just if you, I guess, just try, most of the time it'll work out. Google and YouTube have been my best friend in a lot of cases. But yeah, that's totally normal in my experience to feel that way. That's been 3 years. I still kind of don't know what I'm doing.
I just happened to look to my left into the remnants of some of my like at home classroom. And like, this is how I like taught at home, like just piles of sticky notes with things written down and things that I decided I was going to grade when they put comments in the chat randomly. So like, this is my life.
I guess I just want to thank you for that. I didn't know if I was missing out on like an adulting journal that everybody else had access to. So that really, I think, helps me to focus on learning in the process.
I think that anybody that says they have it figured out is a liar.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions?
I'm like Courtney, and I'm just like very curious. You guys are both so interesting. But Danny, you said you were from the Metro Detroit or Detroit area. Do you mind sharing where you work? Because I'm from Sterling Heights, and that's very close to that area.
Okay, yeah. So I grew up in Warren. I live in Royal Oak now, but I work for a company called Limbach. They do like mechanical systems for large projects. So actually one of them now, I don't know how many of you are from the Detroit area, but it's the that big skyscraper that's going in downtown is one of our projects. So stuff like that. So probably nothing that anybody's ever heard of, but maybe you've seen a truck pass by. But I enjoy it. I kind of stepped a little bit away from engineering since starting and have been more into like software development and kind of tying in software with our engineering systems.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions?
Okay, yes, I do. I just wondered if you guys had any like interview tips because I get like so scared and like actually like want to cry. So I don't know if you have anything like you'd want to share. I would appreciate it.
So I've been to lots of job interviews. I've probably lost track. I couldn't even tell you how many. For a while, my hobby was like checking the job posting websites, and my dad did it too. And he'd be like texting me, he like, did you see that, this district posted this job today? And so I went to so many interviews. They all kind of like blur together, but I totally get like the anxiety. I don't think I ever went to one. I went to like one feeling confident, and that was when my host district was hiring right after I graduated, and they're like, you're a shoo-in, they'll hire you, you've got this. And then they didn't. So that was like the only one I ever went into feeling confident. That was like the first one. And you can only prepare so much. I mean, you can look up the questions online that say, what are you going to get asked in an interview for X job? And I liked to look at those and just kind of have an idea of how I would answer them. But honestly, those were never the questions that they asked. So it's just kind of, I wish I could say it got better with time, but you think you're going to be nervous anytime. The thing that frustrated me the most is that we were always taught in the College of Ed to have a portfolio to take in with lesson plans and letters of recommendation, and no one ever looked at it, ever. I would have it sitting on the table in front of me, and just no one would ever look at it. It got looked at once, and that was the interview that I got hired at. And it was funny because the principal that was in the interview that asked to look at it, he's like, I'm going to ask you to look at this because no one ever asked to look at my portfolio. And it was so frustrating. And so just know that you don't always have the expectations. Like, we were built up that everybody was going to want to see that you needed to have it or you would never get hired. And out of probably 12 interviews, like I said, it got looked at one time. And I guess it was the one that mattered. But it was just frustrating to carry that around and like dust it off every time for it to sit on the table.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's all the interview workshops and everything and the stuff that people will tell you about interviews. Some of it really helps. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a different person interviewing you at any place you go to, and they're going to have, their things that they're looking for. And so I guess my advice is, it does help to know those kind of standard questions that they ask, like, have some sort of plan for the future. At least know a little bit about what company or if, I don't know if you're in the college ed or maybe what district you're going to. But I know in my experience, everybody's kind of been different. Some people look for, don't really ask you much about your education at all. And they'll just kind of ask you about general things like, how would you handle conflict? How would you, do this? How would you do that? Other people are more interested in your accomplishments, like what you have done. So it really depends. And I don't know if that's kind of a bad answer, but my advice to kind of help calm your nerves is just knowing that they're people. It's just like anybody else you'll ever meet. They're people. They're gonna be, nice if you're nice to them, and hopefully that helps.
I think something else to go with that, Hannah, is that don't be afraid to brag about yourself. I know that's something that I struggle with. Like, I'm presenting at a conference next month and I had to write a bio and send it to them. And I hate that. There's nothing more painful to me than having to write 5 sentences about myself. And I think that if there is something that would benefit you in what you're doing, don't be afraid to kind of show it off if there's an opportunity. I think to that, my portfolio, I had a really incredible opportunity with Dr. Kavanaugh. I wrote a book that SVSU published, and I would carry that stupid book around with me in my portfolio to every interview, and no one would ever want to look at it. And I was like, but you need to see this book that's in here. And so finally, when Dr. Poole did look at it in that interview, I was like, by the way, would you like to look at the copy of my book that's in the inside cover of my portfolio? And they thought that was super cool. And no one ever would have known that because they didn't look at my portfolio. And I wish well, I don't wish it because I got the job I wanted in the end, but I should have said something about it in the other ones, and I just didn't. Which English 380 book, Anna? Probably. It's not probably that one, but there's a couple of them.
Is it the purple one? Hold on, I have it.
Oh, are you talking about like the class textbook?
Yeah.
No, this is like a book. It's about a cemetery in Bay City. It's a nonfiction book. But Dr. Kavanaugh was the mentor for the project. But if you do the post-apocalyptic project and see the published version of that, I do have a story in there too. But I don't know if she uses that anymore.
I did not have Dr. Kavanaugh, but I have the course pack, so that's what I thought you were discussing. Because I know
this one was like a different project that she was the sponsor of for that, but it's probably the same Pro 380 book that I had too, though, when I took that class.
Yeah, absolutely do not be humble. I agree with that 100%. If you have like some sort of music that gets you in the zone, feeling yourself like I'm the shit, then you should do that.